society.
Bro, after Avery said an avalanche, bro, I thought this guy was like fucking. This guy said he was washed. I don't believe anything anymore.
Yeah.
If I
Avery
say
is
I'm
just. Avery is actually like one of the top players in the U.S. I think
Yeah, this guy doesn't
he
even
was
play
the
that
best.
football.
Yeah, apart from Happy Feets, I think Avery would have been the best.
Where's my credit? I'll be top 5. I'll be top 5 by 17.
Yeah.
I just need to know who to get past.
I could have done better at this, but at least I know how to do this chart. Somewhat.
How do you play this chart, honestly? Are you alive? No.
No. Apart from the pro players, I think I had the highest score. I think I had to deal with J-Boy, Paranoia Boy, and I think Chadley.
Sadly, we live in a society.
But having to deal with the boys is brutal.
Go to T27. Oh shit, Light was there? I forgot.
Yeah, lightweight. Lightweight is crazy good at Pump It Up.
Yeah, I literally follow him on Instagram. He's actually really good.
I known him from I think DDR, but he plays like lightweight is like really good on like uppers for DDR, and watching him play Pump It Up is even crazier.
You should see my fucking DDR scores.
Yeah.
I really
top 16 time.
11 hours.
Oh wait, that's women's non-binary tournament.
Oh,
Non-binary
Right.
mentioned. Non-binary mentioned.
non-binary. Oh my god.
I wanted this chart.
That's me. No way.
Anyways, we are in the pro tournament.
Oh my god, Adrenaline Blaster?
The pro.
Bro, fuck that chart, honestly.
Yeah. Anyways, Hellfire S22.
Okay. La 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 lava. Shit.
I just be missing shit.
I gotta study.
I'm also trying to conserve my energy, based on how my opponent plays, so I'm also kind of like... I think I took a little peek, just to take a look and see whether or not if I should conserve energy. But it kind of comes in and bites me in the ass a little bit. Yeah, because I decided to cheat this part. Just to conserve. But I decided to put on a show here because I'm gonna twist this part. I can probably try a 990 this.
I don't know how you do this chart. I don't know how to play singles anymore. I gotta figure out how to do this chart.
Hi everybody.
Everybody's
It's
clearing
Sugi.
it. It's my turn.
And happy OSU 10-year anniversary.
My turn to be the youngest
to me.
S26, 1948 clear.
And it's almost 2 years too late.
Alright, anyways, the next chart
Yeah, I know what
is
you're thinking. Is she
Star
deadass
Command
about to make a draw my life in
D23.
2025?
Oh, wow.
Well,
I
actually,
thought
I
Forest
am.
Overdrive, not Star Command.
I wasn't really sure how I was gonna make this video, hence why it took so long. But a lot of people suggested that I would do a draw my lifestyle video, and I thought it was a pretty cute idea. I also felt like it was a good time to make this because I've definitely been reflecting more on my life and my career, myself, and my hopes.
I could have
in the
also
future.
done
So,
better,
thanks for
as
being
in
here.
straight up
Let's get into
full
it.
send the 24th
So, like a lot
instead
of
of trying
people,
to
I
cheat
grew up
them.
with video games.
Yeah.
One of my
I did
earliest
that, and
memories
it
was
was a
seeing the game
mistake.
The Ooze on my dad's Xbox.
And it almost bit me in
which
the
was
ass.
both horrifying
Almost.
and fascinating at the same
I would
time.
actually consider myself lucky.
I also had a lot of cousins who played a lot of games, so I grew
But
up
you'll
with
kinda
them
see
and a
it
lot of
here.
Sonic, Halo, Call of Duty, Smash, and all this kind of stuff. Blah blah blah. So basically, gaming has been there for my whole life.
Honestly,
But if I'm gonna start talking about my OSU career, I'm gonna start here.
I would
So when
try
I was
and
in
combo all
elementary
of this,
school, people would, you know,
eat
bring their
shit
Game Boys
on
and
the-
DSs to sneakily play
cheat the
games
fir-
during
on the-
lunch and recess.
go hard on the
So I
first
saw
run
a
and then
couple of
just
kids hidden
bullshit the
away
second
near
run.
the gym playing something.
That was
I walked up to
kinda
them, and lo and
my mindset
behold,
on
they
that.
were playing
Except
the
I think
original
I
Osu
bullshitted the first
Tatake
part.
when then, which I thought was so interesting. It's
Like,
like one of the
this-
most vivid
Everything up to like
core
the
memories of my
first
life.
first run, you could PG all
So
of
fast
this.
forward to high school,
Yeah, it's
I
so
saw someone playing
straightforward.
a similar game in the school library,
Do you
and
hit-
it felt like
do you
a
hit this?
crazy flashback all the way back to the 4th grade.
Oh, it's not a gimmick
Eventually,
anymore. That's right.
I saw them go to the home
Yeah.
screen,
Whoa.
and in big bold
shit.
letters was
Yeah, they don't
OSU.
have the stupid
So
slowdown at
that's
the
when my
beginning.
life started to go downhill. No, I'm just kidding. From what I
I
remember,
don't know what I
after
remember
that, I
That's
basically
why
just went
I
home to
thought I made
download
it
the
at
game,
23.
and I was pretty much hooked right away.
Oh, here comes the hard part.
Only a couple months after I started playing, I reached my all-time high play count of 4,471,
Dude, this is full speed practice
which is
for
not a
you.
lot to the rest of you, I know, but a lot for me. I think I was just looking up random Vocaloid songs and playing them, and I did make a couple
Luckily,
of
my
friends while playing in some
consistency
multi
pulls me
lobbies.
through.
Some that I still talk to this day. And I was really grateful for my new OSU friends because it was also around the time when my parents' divorce was getting really rocky. It was a classic case of, you know, playing games at full volume while your parents yell at each other in the living room. And honestly, OSU really was all I fully dedicated myself to for a long while. I eventually got into other games as well, like Smite and Arcade. So
Damn!
my monthly play count ended up dropping, but I would always still get back on to play OSU every so often. At some point in high school, I had broken up with my then boyfriend because, well, he was an ass and only played League all day. But more so because one day he compared my OSU skill to a mutual friend of ours. So I literally dumped his ass
Oh, I
shortly
completely
after that
missed
and
my
got
match
on
against
the grind.
Chadley.
You can see on my play graph exactly when that happened. Although it was kind of a sad thing because the high play count was always pretty much a coping mechanism, just like it was before. And this time I didn't really feel like I had close friends, really. My relationship was over then, and this was also around the time when my dad ended up moving out of home. But when I say I got on the grind, I'm really not exaggerating.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I
I
was
would wake
after
up at
these
4 to 5
guys.
a.m. every day to play OSU before school.
Okay, yeah.
And then play
Yeah,
when I
did
got
that
back
Discord
home from
D20?
school as well. I was
Yeah.
literally going up to easily 6
You don't have a
hours
one
day
miss
when I
on that?
chose to play. And
Yeah,
really,
I
don't
have,
remember
have,
much outside
actually,
those
I
couple
have
of months
a
playing.
SG
I think I was
on
just really
this.
stressed out or
Either I have a
alone or
1 miss or a 1 grade.
disassociating and just kind of drifting by.
It's also
The
gonna
only
be
thing that I really had
a chart
was
that
my
I
fun
might
little
grind
game
a perfect game
that I was
for.
getting pretty good at. Then
I
the
was
cheating
I was
accusations
grinding
started
for a
rolling in.
PG on it.
I was
I couldn't get it
confused.
for some reason.
I minded my own
Yeah.
business, and I
'Cause
put
I'm
a
on-
lot of
I was
hours in
not
on
a
the game. I
D22.
played almost every day
Base.
then.
I'm on base
But
pads.
people were suspicious since I came out of nowhere, and I didn't really have any presence anywhere. I never even watched any YouTube or Twitch content. I wasn't in any Discords. I don't even think I had a Discord account then. It was really just me and my game. And cheating accusations have happened to many OSU players now, of course, but back then I feel like suspicion was super, super powerful. At least when it came to actually getting someone banned.
Shoutouts to Osing for
But
making this chart.
I promise I have never ever cheated any of my scores on OSU. Besides, if I was
I could
cheating, I
also
probably
do this
wouldn't be
section
playing
a
full
lot
area.
better.
Like that's a lot of effort.
Oh, this chart.
So when I got
fucking-
banned, I really thought my account was stolen, genuinely. When I tried to figure out what was wrong, I was gaslit by the staff so horribly, and even my only couple of friends in the community started to lose trust in me because of this. Unlike a normal restriction, I was sort of locked out of my account, so if I tried to put in my credentials or anything, it just like would not let me log in. So after some back and forth with OSU support, they just called me a little dirty cheater, so I went on to completely quit the game. I played Mania here and there, but there was basically no more OSU after that at all.
Ooh.
After I graduated high school, I started getting really suffocated at home alone with my mom. So one day I spontaneously got a job at Toys R Us, which was great. As great as Toys R Us can be. Over a year later, basically, after fighting with OSU support for months and months, I did finally get an email that I was unbanned. I remember it exactly. My mom was in the room, annoying me, my jaw dropping, my heart stopped.
Yeah, I can't beat
I was
that.
finally back and able to play the game I love.
Damn.
And ever since then, my play count has been pretty regular. Since
Chadley's
I
also
decided to
coming
stream
in like
every
1
single session of my
year out
OSU
of
gameplay,
retirement.
so no one ever doubted my legitimacy ever again. Which even now,
Okay, well.
I don't think I've ever
I
had
gotta
a
take
session
shower.
off
One
stream
moment.
besides practicing for tournaments or for scrims. But unfortunately, after my unban, people were still suspicious. I was
Actually, I
cast
wonder
aside as
what
just another
song that
return
is.
cheater, even though there was no proof. And even though my scores were still getting better and better. I remember having a report thread made on me after my sudden life play. I went to work very sad and disgruntled that day. And even my manager asked if I was okay. Love you, Sean. There ended up being
think
a
I
group
shit
of
missed
people who
somewhere.
were actually really against me at the time.
Around here.
They hate rated my streams and my Discord server, always calling
Right
me out
there.
on Reddit or Twitter, and somehow even got support to publicly shame me on Twitter over something that I never did. Honestly, I don't even know how I kept playing through all that, or even how I kept fighting against OSU support for my account. Like, looking back, I was exceptionally tough. I'd say I started hate grinding my way to the top after that, which, as you know, eventually worked, but I feel like any heartbroken teen would have turned around and quit then, and I'm really glad I did. So, work at Toys R Us was going okay. Streaming was fun when I did it, but
I do not want to
I decided to go to school and start studying art and animation. I let go of my Toys R Us job to focus on school more, so it was just that and streaming for a while. My school was only a year and a half, so when it's about to end and the job hunt was starting, I just decided to stream a lot more to fill in the time until I actually landed a job. And wow, it turned out that was the perfect time to start doing that. I had a lot of need for redemption built up in me around this time. Keeping up my solo skills was top priority, obviously, but I really wanted to test my skill in a real tournament setting. So the winter of that year was OWC 2020. I previously didn't make the team in 2019, but this year I went all out, okay? I was approaching the peak of my skill, and it really showed during that tournament run. Every week, I wanted to do something that
section.
would get people talking. Whether it was FCing every map on my debut week, overmodding every free mod to get my team extra score to win, or just being the crazy full area girl on Team Canada.
And I got like really gassed
And
out at this
it
section.
worked. More people started to show up to my streams, and I started to post some of my scores on YouTube too. Then, one of my best seasons as a player came during summer of 2021. Euphoria, Union, Because Maybe's out the ass. A lot of mega iconic scores came out of this year. Everything was really going great when it came to streaming, and I ended up loving the tournament scene too. In OWC 2020, we actually did get top 3 on Team Canada, and I was dubbed Most Improved Player of OWC 2021, which was a huge honor. In
981
2022,
from Chadley
my
is
team won
really
one of the
good.
most prestigious high-stakes tournaments, Corsace Open. There was also Corsace Closed at that time, where I had one of my best tournament runs of all time, beating players like Matthew, Arnold, Reedcat, Taquito, and ultimately getting second in what was one of the biggest 1v1 tournaments of the year. Even after all that trouble of being banned, OSU is now becoming even more rewarding than ever. So much so that I even ended up quitting the freelance art job I had to pursue streaming full-time.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So the freelance job I had at the end of 2021 had to do with 3D modeling and
I should
texturing.
not have warmed up with
But even while I worked, I continued to stream as much
a chart
as I
like
could.
this, mainly because
But honestly, the work was fun. I learned a lot, and I got to work on some pretty cool projects like the Lux Empyrean skin. Just the stuff.
I definitely
though.
could have warmed up with a chart
But
like Super Style
the
and
freelancing
D21.
was kind of making small money, and eventually my streaming was starting to make a little bigger money. So much
But
that I
warming up
started
with
to
Arcana
contemplate
Force,
quitting my
not a good
freelancing
idea.
job and going head on with content creation. So for 2 weeks straight, I literally thought about nothing but should I quit my job and keep streaming, or do I try to balance both but not have time to improve either? I thought about it so much that I felt like I was at the point where I had to take a leap and decided that I should see where this next opportunity was going to take me. 2022, 2023, and 2024, they were really all great years for OSU, but maybe not so much with my personal life. I ended up moving away from my mom kind of suddenly, and I've moved another 4 times since then. You know, I worried a lot.
Had the shortcut of death. Now we have the. I really like this chart in particular because there are also some nods to the original Death Moon chart, like the getting into the little click sounds. We have the staircase patterns. I think that's cool. It makes it fun to watch. But getting into the match, both players have no problems with this intro. This is going to focus a lot on bracket check, but it's also going to have some very tiring movement for 12 notes at 204.
Players also have very good personal best, so it could be a bit up in the air of who will get this. They're both very comfortable with the song. Little staircase.
And we're getting into the 12 note run right here. Now watch these bracket movements because they are very difficult being in the middle. And this will change up when we do the next iteration of this near the end of the song. They were in the middle 6 now. They'll be on the outer corners later.
Definitely pay attention to their footwork during these sections.
Yeah, D-Mill is still keeping full confidence here. Bird having a little bit of a drop, but then definitely catch up coming up. Like I said, the movement in this chart is very deceptive and very tiring. So when you get to the back end of the second set of runs, you will be tired. Oh, D-Mill, you get that bracket miss.
Shit miss.
Trading with Bird right there. Now we got a reverse staircase. This one being a little bit harder to do. Reverse staircases like these are a little bit more awkward with how you have to position your feet.
Then I just did really bad on this section.
Yes, you can see that moving into between the outer and the inner parts, and this is deceptively hard to do, especially on the down right ones.
Just looking at their feet when they're hitting that, looking at their ankle to hit them, it's painful.
Yeah, D-Million getting a bunch of misses, letting Bird catch up. Bird's gonna be able to make this fast here. Last one to make it over. Oh, but still manages to take with another. Bird really can't. Especially folks. It might be fun. The song for 40. That was
Extremely fast. I know there are some players that if it's
yeah. If I
Yay!
about money, and I've had some pretty poor housing situations. And sometimes, honestly, it just became hard to focus on just playing Osu for fun instead of treating it like a job, even though it is my job now. However, there's just been so many things that have happened because of Osu that has allowed me to grow in my regular life. Like, I used to be scared of traveling and planes, and I beat my fears and flew alone for the first time ever, actually just recently. And usually I'm pretty shy and introverted, but I attend all the conventions I can and try to connect with new people and other content creators. And I even got to play in a couple LAN tournaments like the Round Table. There I got to meet some of the coolest people ever. Like, you know, seeing BTMC work on production and host his own event, seeing people like Bubbleman, Rafis, Fancy Lad, along with so many other iconic Osu figures. And meeting Malashevsky and even his wonderful mom, which I will always treasure. Osu is still so fun to me, especially streaming it, but after 10 years, I think a lot changes. I guess in any field, a lot would change. Tournaments don't feel as rewarding or have the same prestige they used to for some reason. The game meta keeps changing to things I'm not really good at, yet Osu's still so deep-rooted in my heart that I'm probably gonna always keep coming back. Osu, streaming, and the community have been there for almost half my life now, and I'm really grateful for everyone that has ever stopped by my streams, ever watched a YouTube video, or even just those who know me by name. You all really helped make my life better in general, and I feel much happier than I did before. Even though I don't play Osu like a 9 to 5 anymore, I don't think I'm ever gonna truly quit. But now I find myself working harder to become more than just an Osu top player. I still think I'm improving actually, and I do look forward to future tournaments. But now I'm finding a better balance as a content creator and a competitive player, I think. I've really been enjoying just building a community and chatting with you guys and playing different variety games as well. Honestly, after starting to stream full-time, I realized that a dip in my Osu skill started to feel like my work in general is becoming poorer, or not worth watching. Osu and making content can be all about numbers sometimes, so it took a long while for me to step back and appreciate my achievements and how far I've come, and work harder on becoming a better entertainer in general. And now, 2025 has only just started, and like I said, I do feel like I'm finally getting the hang of things as a content creator. I see more clearly now than ever that if I continue to nurture this opportunity and this community, it'll not only turn into a lifelong career, but it'll also help me find more peace and comfort in my life. Even though I can't predict the future or anything, I can, you know, see myself being here for a very long time. Besides, I think there's probably no better happiness than having a space where others can be happy as well. And I really, again, really could not do any of this without you guys. Especially when I think back to when baby Zudi started streaming, I think she would be really proud to see me now, and all of us today. I'm someone who really believes that if there's a dream you want or an opportunity you have that you want to make work, you can always do it with enough heart. So, let's all continue to work hard and make this community as great as it can be. I think no matter what, looking back, it's always going to be crazy to me when I remember that getting hackusated on Osu led me to becoming a full-time streamer. And even with a rough start to my Osu career, I'm happy I can look back with fondness, knowing that the game changed my life in so many ways. And I ain't ever leaving Osu. But now, I'm also finding new things to love just as much. So happy 10-year anniversary.
Oh, okay. This is a very cool aesthetic. I need to turn on live buzzer probably. Live, love, lobotomize. Great slogan in the background, thank you. Okay, surely Blue won't get 300 millisecond lag spikes. Ah, okay. Got it.
You can't overthink this. The zipper will kill you.
But how? It's gonna move right. It's gonna move right into the wall, so I jump immediately. Oh. But how? It's gonna move. It's gonna move right. It's gonna move right into the wall, so I jump immediately. Oh. Ow! It's gonna move. It's gonna move right. It's gonna move right into the wall, so I jump immediately. Oh. I love this match.
Okay, Simon.
Technically, I wasn't wrong. It's gonna move right. It's gonna move right into the wall, so I jump immediately. Oh.
This is a joke. Specifically, it's a English-Japanese bilingual pun. And if you give it to AI, you'll get a lot of varying but not correct interpretations of what this means, while giving it to humans will almost always give you the right answer. AI is, of course, changing all the time, and so by the time you're watching this video, it might be able to understand this joke. But by starting at the details of how this works and generalizing from there, I'll try to build a framework of 3 different things that AI will always have trouble understanding, no matter how it is. In the world of Google Translate and easily accessible online dictionaries, it's easy to assume that the problem of translation is basically solved. And while this might be true for simple words or phrases, translation in context is still quite challenging. For example, let me show you something that I was confused by. This is a joke. Specifically, it's a English-Japanese bilingual pun. And if you give it to AI, you'll get a lot of very
Kiss on my ass.
varying this joke, which as we all know will not at all affect how funny it is. I'm getting ahead of myself. To start, we just need to explain this joke, which as we all know will not at all affect how funny it is. Okay, so we're going to need some baseline knowledge about Japanese to have this make sense. In order to understand Japanese, you need to be able to read 3 separate writing systems. Or maybe 4, or... Okay, there's 5 different things you need to be able to read to understand Japanese. But for now, we're just going to focus on one called kanji. Kanji are logographic characters, meaning they represent concepts instead of sounds. So, for example, the word to read is yomu. And in that word, yo is written using this character for reading. But in other words, like tsundoku, it's read as doku instead. But it still carries the concept of reading. The first character here vaguely means pile, and this character means reading. So it's a pile of unread books. Incidentally, this is one of my favorite Japanese words. The connotation is that you have a pile of books you're planning on reading, but you keep buying new books faster than you read your existing ones, so the pile never shrinks. Lately, I've gotten into the habit of stacking books I'm planning on referencing in videos into their own tsundoku piles, which I find rather entertaining. Anyways, in addition to using this ability of kanji to be pronounced different ways in different words, my joke also uses kanji in a particular poetic way called a yoji jukugo, or 4 kanji idiomatic expression. Because kanji represent more general concepts than specific words, these phrases can express complicated ideas in a very compact way. Common ones you might see are things like shichiten hakki. The individual symbols mean 7 fall, 8 rise. So the meaning of the phrase in general is something like, it doesn't matter how many times you fail, it matters how many times you get back up afterwards. Or keep going no matter how tough it is, kind of vibe. Another example is dokusho shoyu. which means by reading books, you can count the wise philosophers of the past as friends. Now, amongst these poetic pieces of wisdom, we have my Yoji Jukugo. Reading the kanji one by one gives this morning, every morning. You could interpret this to have some poetic meaning, something about atomic habits or something like that. But unlike normal Yoji Jukugo, the true meaning of this one is only revealed when it is pronounced. The first two characters can be read together as kesa, and the second two characters can be read as mayasa. So together we get kesa mayasa. So yeah, the whole explanation is just a setup to say kiss my ass in English. I never said it was a good pun, just that it existed. Now I've had multiple bilingual speakers see this and immediately go, kesa mayasa? Oh, that's a dumb pun. But plugging this phrase into top-of-the-line AI chatbots like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and DeepSeek all give a variety of confused results. Specifying that it's a pun just results in the AI insisting that this morning, every morning is funny, and even spelling out that the joke results from the process of sounding out the words in Japanese and then interpreting those sounds in English rarely gives anything resembling the correct interpretation of kiss my ass. So why does AI find this so hard? This is one of those questions that has a lot of different ways you can approach it. And because machine learning, and LLM specifically, can be so opaque, it can be hard to understand at a satisfying level. So I'd like to start by saying that, from the onset, this problem is unfairly harder for the AI than it is for humans. The nature of typing a prompt into a chat box already strips essential elements that humans use to understand each other: context. In the world of Google Translate and easily accessible online dictionaries, it's easy to assume that the problem of translation is basically solved. And while this might be true for simple words or phrases, translation in context is still quite challenging. For example, let me show you something that I was confused by. This is from the show Vinland Saga, which is a drama about Vikings that goes through decent amounts of length to be relatively historically accurate. So my first reaction to seeing this was, why does this Danish guy in 1014 know about a Japanese board game that doesn't exist yet? And the answer to that, instead of just being a result of bad writing, involves the entire process of inspiration and adaptation that eventually led to these English subtitles I'm reading. The Vinland Sagas are a collection of mostly historic Norse tales about the first Europeans to settle Iceland, Greenland, and the Americas, which they called Vinland. Japanese author Makoto Yukimura took part of that story, combined it with other historical events and local folklore, and created a comic called Vinland Saga. This comic was later adapted into an anime TV show, and the clip I showed was the English translation of that show. To explain that translation, we're going to have to take a step back and look at some features of Japanese that English doesn't have. I mentioned how kanji are pronounced differently in different contexts. This makes Japanese more difficult to get literate in, though I don't think English speakers necessarily have a right to complain about that. So, when learning Japanese, instead of having to memorize thousands of characters right away, you instead learn a separate system that is closer to an alphabet, where each symbol has a phonetic component but no inherent meaning. Books written for children will be written almost entirely in this system, which greatly reduces the amount of symbols you need to memorize. As you get better at reading, it becomes nicer to use kanji instead. It's a lot faster and can disambiguate homophones, which are much more common in Japanese than in English. But when you encounter a kanji you don't know, it's very annoying to look it up. So, writing targeting intermediate readers will use what are called ruby characters. Basically, this involves writing the phonetic reading above the kanji that gives the specific phonetics for the kanji in that context. You see this in basically every kanji that shows up in writing targeting teenagers. And as a side note, it's one of the defining factors of what makes something shonen or not. This format of writing the meaning and pronunciation of a word separately has a bunch of other uses as well. So, for example, the word for house in Japanese is uchi or ie, and you write it with this character. But in this comic, they use the character but then phonetically write sore, which means that. So what this means is that the character is just saying that, but he means that house. By using ruby characters in this way, Japanese can have characters speak more vaguely, but then convey more specific meanings to the reader. And that's what's happening in our Viking story. The character says battle isn't like, and then we see this, which says he's saying the word Nefeltafel, but what he means is shogi. Nefeltafel is a strategy board game Vikings played at the time that involves trying to manipulate an army to kill or escape with a central king. Shogi is also a strategy board game about manipulating an army to kill a king, and is popular in Japan in the modern day. The author assumed that most of his readers would not know what Nefeltafel is, so he used Ruby characters to simultaneously communicate that the character is saying Nefeltafel, and Nefeltafel means something similar to Shogi. When the comic was adapted into a show, you can't verbally communicate two things at the same time like this, so the showrunners made the reasonable decision of prioritizing their audience understanding the scene over it being lore accurate. So they just have the actor say Shogi in Japanese. Then we finally get these English subtitles. If you listen to what the Japanese is saying, you can hear he actually says Shogi. And so putting Shogi in the subtitles is an accurate translation. If we just take the Japanese script and plug it into something like ChatGPT, we basically get the same thing. But we, knowing additional context of both the languages and mediums involved, can see two other translations that I think are better. One option is to go all the way back to the original source material and use the Norse term Nefeltafel. And in fact, this is extra fitting because Nefeltafel is asymmetric. Only one side has a king to defend, which matches the metaphor's use in the story better. Alternatively, we could look at the intent of the use of Ruby characters in the comic. Nefeltafel is being used to talk about military theory and tactical thinking, which in Japanese media is often a role filled by shogi. But shogi is not very popular outside of Japan, so an English speaker isn't necessarily more likely to know shogi than they are Nefeltafel. I personally know a number of people who have played Nefeltafel but not shogi. Instead, in English media, chess is usually used as a proxy for tactical thinking in the same kind of way.
Ah, the Fibonacci opening. Very interesting. You're just gonna mess with me this whole time, right? Yeah.
So I would argue that translating shogi into chess is, within this context, a much better translation than what AI gave us. The subtitles I originally showed were from the company Crunchyroll, but different companies that translated this show into English did it different ways, and we can see both of the things I said were better than shogi showing up in the English dubs of the show.
I don't need any of your bullshit. If you know how to beat him, why didn't you take him on yourself?
A battle is not the same as a game of Nefeltafel, boy.
Nefeltafel and chess aren't translations of the word shogi. An AI would be correct to always just translate the word shogi into shogi. But by digging into the context of why that sentence exists like that, and considering who the audience this translation is intended for, we can give a better translation than the one that's literally correct. And that's something AI can't do. You'll also notice that in all three of those translations, the kid swears.
I don't need any of your bullshit.
But Japanese doesn't actually have any swear words, or at least not in the same way as English. So all those translators took into account the character that's saying it. Having this angsty teenager say, "Ah, that's rubbish," doesn't make sense in context. He would definitely be cussing. But again, it's a less accurate translation unless you know the context of who that character is, and the context of the features of the language in general. In the afterword of the English translation of the Mandarin book The Three-Body Problem, the translator Ken Liu has this to say: "The obvious difficulties, such as the differences in linguistic structures and cultural references, are actually relatively easy to resolve, but there are more subtle issues involving literary devices and narrative techniques. Overly literal translations, far from being faithful, actually distort meaning by obscuring sense." In my opinion, this is the biggest hurdle that AI has for translation. If you look at translations for individual sentences on ChatGPT or Google Translate, they're going to be pretty good, but it's not good at translating full bodies of work, things like an entire book or show, because it isn't able to dig in and have this more contextual understanding of how the language is being used. On the other hand, humans can communicate with just context. The most extreme example being Nicaraguan Sign Language, where a group of children who didn't speak any language got together and, through repeated interaction and remembering the context of those interactions, dynamically developed an entire language over the course of a few years. Going back to my original joke, you can see some similarities. If you're in my apartment and see this sign, you have a bunch of context I'm not giving to the AI. You can see the other Yoji Jukugo and are therefore more inclined to interpret this poetically. You know me and my sense of humor, and therefore are more likely to suspect it's a pun. And you're fluent in English, and therefore will default to interpreting things as English much quicker. All of that's important to determining the meaning of the phrase. So, with that in mind, let's try to give AI that additional context and see if it can understand it then. Here's my updated prompt I'm using, and I sent that to a bunch of different LLMs. And some of them got the correct answer, but only some of the time, and it depends on the phrasing. Interestingly, if at any point in the prompt I mention bilingual pun, almost every LLM can get it almost every time, which to me implies that AI knows all the information it needs to solve this, but for some reason isn't using that information unless specifically prompted to. And to understand why that is, I think we're going to need to dig more into the details of how specifically LLMs work, and how the structure of LLMs being different from the structure of human speech processing leads to another class of problems that AI is worse at understanding than humans. To start, let's look at a narrow problem that AI is commonly used for: sentiment analysis. Given a piece of text, like an Amazon review of a product, can AI detect if that text is positive or negative? A simple way to start this is to look at every word in English and give it a score for how positive or negative it is. We can give words like awesome or great a positive score, and words like awful or gross a negative one. So in a sentence like, the price and quality is great, but I dislike how heavy it is, we could have great cancel out dislike and evaluate this as a neutral review. But we'll quickly run into sentences where this won't work. Look at, the quality was not great. Here, the not should make the value of great negative. But a sentence like, the quality was not awful, is still negative, even though awful is preceded by not. So we need some more complex ways of processing language to capture this contextual information. The field of linguistics has been working on problems like this for a long time, and has settled on something like a language processing stack they think humans use. I have a whole video on this if you aren't familiar with these terms, though you sometimes see some differences. Like in my video, I kind of conflate phonetics and phonology, which are kind of different things. You could lump pragmatics into semantics, you could include morphosyntax and psycholinguistics, etc. But in general, we think it works something like this. Up to a few years ago, it was common for AI engineers to directly use these linguistics concepts when building their models. You can see here a direct implementation of something called X-bar theory for syntax. But as language-based AI has improved, it's gotten more removed from how we think human language works. Frederick Jelinek, a researcher in this field, is relatively famous for saying, "Every time I fire a linguist, the performance of the speech recognition goes up." GPT models, for instance, use structures like multi-layer perceptrons and attention blocks. These have proven remarkably effective, but are just large piles of machine-optimized matrix multiplications. They no longer resemble actual linguistics at all. This is actually more common than you might expect when you're using computers to generate things. For example, in my last video on generating maps with computers, I used algorithms based on music theory to generate continents. That's obviously nothing at all like what the process actually looks like, but as long as it gives a nicer result, it usually doesn't matter for most applications. Now, of course, modern AI can extract a lot more meaning from its phrase than just the sentiment. Imagine if instead of trying to determine if a phrase was just positive or negative, we also try to determine if it's happy or sad. Now we can extract a much wider range of meaning. We don't just get two values, but we also have meaningful combinations. Positive and sad might be something like bittersweet, a whole new emotion we didn't have to model explicitly. So we can add more of these dimensions of meaning, and the total amount of states that we store goes up extremely fast. Then, instead of explicitly stating what we want each of these dimensions to mean, we can let AI determine what's the most optimal. This is the basic idea of unsupervised learning, AI figuring out for itself what the best way to represent data is. So we end up converting language into a series of numbers that represent meaning in an abstract high-dimensional space. This is called the embedding space. And once AI has this abstract representation of meaning, it can convert it to different forms. Chatbots use it to guess the most likely next word. Translation software reverses the process and builds back up a sentence, but now in a different language. And image generators use frameworks like Clip to convert from this low-level representation of meaning into an image. And of course, all of this gets more complicated when you're dealing with multilingual input. Instead of starting with a list of every word in English, we have to start with a list of every word in every language. And so, unless the particular AI you're using has been trained on this wide variety of cultural references, it's going to be bad at dealing with multilingual stuff. For example, here's a Google AI trying to talk about my Spotify listening preferences.
We see you rocking out to a lot of what I would call energetic anime soundtrack. One reason, Vaidweb, A by Asian Kung Fu Generation, and Bling Bang Bang Born by Creepy Nuts are all big hits for you then.
Believe it or not, this is read Haruka Kanata, not A. Although, when you're learning kanji for the first time, that is how it feels sometimes. Now, if we just treat this all as a black box, it's somewhat similar to how we expect human language to work. We get some input, feed it through a bunch of levels of processing it, and end up with some representation of meaning. If we want to translate to a different language, we take that raw meaning and go through the reverse process. That general process is the same, both for humans and AI. But for my pun, it works differently. The